kick us off. All right, thank you for giving me the first question. I appreciate being here with you tonight. It's really good to see you, Dame. I'm glad that you and the congressman hit it off. And this full pull through. How great is this?
Great.
So, absolutely. All right. So, I thought it was going to be some Q&A, but I'm ready. I stay ready, right? They say, you're going to get ready. Thanks for giving me the first question. It's going to be a two-part question. So, the conversation tonight is going to be centered around, is what I was briefed on, is Black entrepreneurship and how we can help small businesses, right? And so, as we know, there's large disparity, racial disparity in small business ownership. We also know that strong mentorship is incredibly invaluable as it relates to entrepreneurship, especially early on. And so I'm curious as to how can philanthropy, venture capital, and then, of course, with the members of Congress, government agencies, how can we help with funding and resources as it relates to Black startup and then the sustaining of Black businesses? I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. A lot of my friends are as well. And so, I'm curious as to how can that full safety circle help us? And then also, two-part question, what has to happen in order to build a stronger pipeline of mentors who can reach back and support business owners?
Well, for me, for the first question, being an entrepreneur, usually your first generation is rough. And, there's no credit. You know what I mean? There's nobody to sign off. And when you're in business, having to be cash and carry can be very stressful. It's a big difference when you have a credit card or you have a credit line and you can have timing issues and you can still be okay. But it's not like that for our culture. So initially, when I first came out to the Black Caucus, it was to sit in on something about, how to keep the Black dollar in the Black community. It's like you got to give some Black loans. You know what I mean? And I just think the criteria shouldn't be so. It's like if you don't have credit, you can't get credit. And no one's going to sign off on, wreck their own credit to help you out, not even family, because they just got it. So it seems like the way the world is programmed, number one, whether you start with credit or not, you're going to end up, you go to school, you got to then get a loan, you end up owing. So there's always this pressure. So if there was a way to make it where, a first generation entrepreneur can get a loan without having to show all this collateral. I've been working with Chase Bank for I was working for 10 years. They never gave me a loan as an independent. And as it relates to more entrepreneurs, especially from our culture, there needs to be more entrepreneurs that win doing it the right way so that they can lead by example. A lot of successful people in our culture, and I hate to say it, sometimes had to compromise their morals and principles to get where they had to go. And a lot of times when you sell out our culture, the other culture embraces you and rewards you and will keep you looking like you're winning when you're really losing because you're doing it to sell out your people. And sometimes they empower people that aren't as smart as they are, so they have nothing to tell. So if there's a Black billionaire, they need to tell everyone else that's not a billionaire how to be one. But I haven't seen this so far. But me, I know every struggle I have. As I learn it, I teach it. And hopefully, a lot of times helping someone out makes it where I can put them in a position where sometimes they can help me out. Because sometimes the older I get, the less strenuous things I like to do. And I like to be with someone that's at the front line and has potential that can bring me to the cool that I always make sure that I have to be at. So, I lead by example, but I just think more should, but more have to do it the right way, and they got to win. And I always think it's important to show what it looks like winning, coming from first generation, so people know that it's real and they have something to dream about and fight toward. And also the schools need to teach a little bit more about credit, entrepreneurship, paying taxes, learning how to vote, and all these things. But all they teach you how to do is have a job or go to jail, one or the other, or play a sport. And I think that's an issue as well. It's not taught. Like, you're not supposed to know how to be a first generation entrepreneur and know what to do once you win. You don't know what to do. No one tells you how to do it, especially not from our culture.
That's a great analysis. And, I would only really add, and I agree, Entrepreneurship is not taught. The value of home ownership and what that means to acquire property as a means of an appreciating asset and being able to transfer wealth from one generation to the next. And the primary vehicle by which middle-class families in America transfer wealth from one generation to the next is through the business ownership, small business ownership, or most prominently home ownership. Those two things aren't really taught. You have to almost learn it on your own. And people coming from the communities that many of us come from, that's a rare thing that you may just stumble upon it. I think in terms of access to capital, one of the lessons that we learned in the context of the pandemic is that initially when we authorized the Paycheck Protection Program, which Andre and I and others fought hard for, to try to make sure that we could help small businesses make it through this moment, the vehicle for providing the assistance came through the traditional banks initially. And what we found is that many women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, family-owned businesses, mom-and-pop shops, the smaller entrepreneurs weren't getting the assistance from the traditional banks. They were servicing their clients, their regular institutions that they had pre-existing relationships with. And so what we did in the second round is to say, we're going to create a separate pool of resources that go to Black-owned banks, women-owned banks, minority-owned banks, so-called community banks, and community development financial institutions, sometimes referred to as CDFIs, to provide the assistance to the entrepreneurs of color, small business owners, women-owned businesses, and such. And what we found is that those community banks were far more likely to provide capital to traditionally excluded entrepreneurs. And so now I think for us, that's a model moving forward as the Biden administration has talked about building back better and focused on trying to make sure that there's an economic empowerment for communities of color. And I think that's part of what you're going to see implemented with the next series of major bills that come through the Congress.
Yeah, that's a very important point, Congressman Jeffries. Which is why every Congress I introduce my Financial Literacy Act, of which you've been a co-sponsor. Thank you. And I met with principals, I met with superintendents, and Dame has a virtual forum where he meets with superintendents weekly. Our project has been to create some kind of system where financial literacy can be taught in schools. We know that teachers are already stretched very thinly because of testing requirements, and they just don't have the capacity. So what this piece of legislation attempts to do is allow schools to partner with accounting firms, banking institutions, credit unions, and universities to teach financial literacy. We're not trying to make folks hedge fund managers or give them the ability to run sovereign wealth funds, but it does allow them an opportunity.
What I would love to see, because when you're trying to break a social class, you go to school, they tell you either you go to school, learn how to get a job, and the only way you could get into that other percent is to be an athlete or an entertainer. But they give you and provide you these opportunities to play ball for your whole life, and knowing that only 1% make it, and they don't teach you anything else about the sport as it relates to an administrative, how to be an owner, how to be a coach, how to do something after basketball, knowing that basketball usually doesn't last but 4 years. So I just think moving forward with esports and with all these different other ways, you have to, if you're going to give someone the opportunity to play a sport or to do something, you have to teach them the managerial skills, life after or life if you don't make it. But I don't think you should be able to play a sport unless you learn all the business of the sport. And also, I think that if there was a way to make debating profitable or making something smart like a team, then they would put it in schools and kids would want to do it because they could look at doing something smart as an escape. But at the end of the day, as a child and a child that's traumatized, always trying to survive, that's all you're thinking about. It's survival and who's going to get you the most money. So it makes only sense for a teacher to understand entrepreneurship, even to be one, so they could teach it, so a kid can learn how to be rich. Because being rich and having money is not easy first generation. You're accountable for everything you're supposed to know. So if you don't pay taxes, or if you don't understand capital gains, or if you pay things, you still have to go to jail, or you still have to pay the tax, or you still get your credit removed. And a lot of this happens because we just don't know. So I would love to see a real entrepreneurship where they teach you the problems that come with making money. Because counting money is a pain. And you wouldn't know that unless you had it. You know, you don't know the problems that come with having money till you get it. And it's funny because the most of the people giving advice about money never had it. But, you know, that's another story. But I just wanted to add on to that.
No, that's good. Hassani has a question, and then Greg Stowers.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Congressman, and thank you all for Congressman Jeffries and Mr. Dash for being here today. I actually own a multimedia company here in Dallas, Commit Inspired Media, and part of the business model is taking some of the youthful things, concepts. You know, we are a very creative people, right? And we put our creativity on YouTube and TikTok and all those type of things. And so my question for you guys is in the media entertainment industry, are there any government initiatives designed to help entrepreneurs, help economics connect with overseas markets, and whether there is or if there's not any kind of initiatives, are there, Mr. Dash, are there any markets that you know of that are overseas that really are looking for that Western Black experience and is willing to connect with our entrepreneurs here in the States?
So because of the pandemic and because everybody started to have streaming services, there's a really big demand for any content all over the world. You know, there's so many ways that people can monetize content right now. What I've done, you know, I have a streaming service, but I just did a distribution deal because it's not like I'm not only going to have it where you can subscribe to get my stuff. I want my stuff monetized. I want it to be, I want to license it. I want ad rev. I want all the ancillary things that come with it. So the answer is yes. You just have to get with a distributor that does that kind of thing. Because digitally, it's really kind of easy for people to digest content and to get an ad in front of it, or to buy it on demand, VOD or TOD, all of that, TV on demand, all of that is there. And it's like, you remember when everyone was bootlegging videotapes with VHSs and those stories were terrible, but people kept buying them? It's like that now. It doesn't even have to be good. They just want culture all day long. And the good thing about content, especially if you can give something with a beginning, middle, and end, as opposed to something that's like sort of like, you know, temporary, like news or something like that, because it happens every day, it gives you residual income. You know, that's what it's all about, making passive income, making money by the pool for something you did 15 years prior to, and all of a sudden you get a check for a couple of $100,000. You know, and that's what never was taught to us. We were taught to sell our culture to other cultures to buy it back from them so they can sell it back to us, you know? And that just isn't really the case anymore because you don't need a middleman. You could go direct to consumer anytime you want, you know? But my thing was, when I wanted to really make an impression overseas, you got to go. You got to go. It's like campaigning in an election. You can't think that unless you go and talk and shake hands to the people and let them talk to you, that they're going to know you just because of what they see over a screen. So I went to London. I'd go to Germany, and I would just understand the culture and let them see what my culture was like and understand the difference live and let them know it's real. But for me, the best way to really be present is to be present. You know, after COVID, and if you get your vaccine and a passport, get over there. You can't really, to me, you can't get no money, you know, in your block and thinking it's going to come to you. You got to go get it. See, I've always tried to be an industry conqueror because the industry as it stands does not behoove us as a culture. So it's about them taking us, exploiting us. And I don't want to fit into that industry. So I have to create industry. I have to knock it down and then rebuild it. And, when you're talking to older thinkers, you have to actually plant a seed and wait a decade for the younger people that haven't been programmed to actually listen, which is why it's such a great time. Because I remember when I was talking about ownership, which I still am, but I was 20 years ago, and I was like the plague. People thought I was crazy for talking to what they considered master like that. And I just was like, how you calling them master? They can't beat us. They can't dance better than us. They can't play ball better than us. They can't dance. They can't make music. Why do we give our stuff to them to sell it back to us? Because we're programmed to believe we need people that we don't. All we got to do is stick together. And again, the commission, I said it right? I always say it different. The commission is a bunch of people from our culture sticking together, not waiting for people to do things for us, but we have to actually do it ourselves. And then we have people like Andre Carson, that's one of us, and Senator Eddie Milton, that's one of us, unapologetic, Muslim, mustache, beard, all of that. And they can relate. That's the common denominator with hip hop is you have a real experience, and that's the way we expressed ourselves, and that's where our connection is. So we have now lawmakers that have the spirit of hip hop in them, the spirit of our struggle, the spirit of our unrecognized trauma, and he knows exactly how to help. And this is the reason why we have to, as a culture, start celebrating our lawmakers, the people that are fighting for us, and not the complainers, not the ones that are talking, the ones that are listening, actually drafting up something, lobbying for it, and then going and getting it changed. Because to me, any law that was passed by a man that had a slave should not be a law. Any piece of curriculum that was implemented by a man that had a slave was only implemented to make people think they were free when they were still slaves and keep it legal. So to me, everything needs to be changed, but we have to teach each other how to change it, and we have to celebrate the people that are doing it. The uncelebrated are the ones that are working the hardest. That's why I'm here.
That's real. Thank you, sir. I love that. That's real. We want to jump in. I think Senator Eddie Milton was actually next. My apologies. And then, is it Jeff and then Greg?
This stuff. Won't let that dang sizzle in people's spirit real quick. First off, it's an honor to be a host tonight, so I appreciate Dr. Carson. Living Congressman Carson like a big brother, like a mentor in the political realm. Served in Senate District 3 in Indiana. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Congressman Jeffries. We know a mutual friend, Elder Watson Diggs, so it's definitely an honor there. But I got a two-part question, to be very quick. To our congressional leaders, what can we as state legislators do to work more collaboratively with the Congressional Black Caucus on policy? I look at what you all had did during last summer when you rolled out your policies on police reform. And we took that at Indiana Black Legislative Caucus and we kind of modeled that, and we're able to pass legislation around police reform this year. And the second part to that is, today, how can we promote the political realm to the culture to make and encourage folks to look at getting in government, getting in politics? I would say cool, right? If you want to make long-term substantive change, you got to change policies, period. So I think that's a two-part question.
Well, the part I can answer is, again, if I have a platform and, my block is clicking, I'm going to always showcase who I think is doing right by a culture and also showcase the things that they may not be able to talk about because they're in politics. It's a place where you can be creative, where you can be relatable, where you can show your vulnerability, show where where you connect. So, it was about getting your own network, having your own streaming service. Making your own narrative is the most important thing. So yeah, it's about making it cool to be smart, cool to care. My thing is, look, it's good to be a good dad. It's good to care about your culture. It's good to treat women right. It's good to know what being a real man is. It's taking care of your family. That's cool. And any other conversation is corny. So if I was talking about something 10, 20 years ago that wasn't so productive to the culture, I'm not talking about it now. This is what I'm talking about now. I still feel I'm cool. I still feel everything I'm doing is cool. So I'm going to always make sure that when I make a movie, when I do any kind of content, any kind of music, any kind of merch, any kind of anything, that anyone that's doing right, that's culturally like-minded, doesn't mean color, but culturally like-minded, you can always hustle on my platform. And I'm going to always make sure if you let me, I'm going to give you the advice. I'll drop it for free. I'll redesign your stuff. I'll make sure your presence is felt. And if you need me, I'm there and everyone that I know. So people need to know that if you mess with one of us, you messing with all of us. You know? At least we're going to embarrass you. So we have a platform to tell people what you're doing. I don't care about politics. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to embarrass you. I'm going to let your kids know what you're doing. I'm going to let your other businesses know what you're doing. And I'm going to edit it up nice. It's not going to look tacky. And we're going to bring the principals. We're going to bring everybody, medical, all of us. We showing up, you know? So it's about making these events. You know, like, for example, I watched you, Senator Eddie, talk about how you trying to save Indiana, bring people there, the frustrations you had with the casino. You sat there, you gave them business, counseled, stood there, made sure they were all right. And now, from what I hear, it's a line around the corner. But ain't nobody saying your name about it. You know, like when you walk in, you get that respect, but the world needs to know what you did. You made a casino open up. You brought business back to Indiana. You care about the history and the lineage of it. You know what I mean? So we have to showcase those that have been through what we've been through and make sure that they have the right standing and the right support. And if we look the other way, then we don't deserve to be famous. We're not trying to be famous to just stay famous. We get famous, or at least when you get famous, it's to make the others famous that deserve it. That's what the purpose of that is. You leverage celebrity for the right reasons. So that's how my agenda is to make it cool. The first thing I did when I met you is I put you with my rock band. With me, I have no features on my album but a senator. And I think that makes me cool. But I can't answer the second half of the question. I'm not legislating.
Senator, I appreciate you asking those two questions, and of course Dame's answer to the first part of that. And also appreciate our fraternal connection. And I do think that, you know, increased collaboration at every level of government is something that we should all be leaning into. Because when you think about sort of where we are in America, it's an all hands on deck moment. And we're in a backlash moment, which we've traditionally been in whenever there's been progress that has been made by Black folks in this country. It always triggers a backlash. Slavery, of course, emancipation that then triggered the backlash following Reconstruction of Jim Crow and the rise of the KKK, a lynching epidemic, Plessy versus Ferguson, the Black Codes, 100 years until the new civil rights movement unleashed itself in the 50s and 60s, and there was progress that was made then. And of course, it was followed by an immediate backlash with the election of Nixon, the rise of anti-government, anti-affirmative action, anti-busing, and then, of course, in 71, 50 years ago this month, when Nixon declared drug abuse public enemy number one, the rise of mass incarceration. At the time that happened, I think there were less than 350,000 people incarcerated in America. Today, 2.3 million, disproportionately Black and Latino. Then Barack Obama gets elected, a new moment of progress. Inevitably, though many of us thought there's no way Donald Trump could get elected, he got elected. Had we actually been paying attention to the history of progress and backlash in this country, we should have known that the election of an African-American president was going to trigger a significant backlash to what had just occurred. And we've seen it with the rise of Donald Trump culminating with the insurrection. I say all that to say, so now we're in a backlash moment. And when you're in a backlash moment, you need all hands on deck, recognizing what's happening in America. And that means every level of government working closely together for those who have a real heart for the community, at the city level, the local level, the county level, the state level, Senator, where you're operating, and the congressional level. And I think in Washington, we can do a better job of interacting with our colleagues at the state legislative level. Many of us, like myself, came out of the state legislature, and a lot of great work, such as what you're doing, is done in the state legislative body. I think, honestly, we've been playing defense for the last several years, coming out of the moment where we've been dealing with someone who was totally out of control at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now that we're trying to work our way out of this moment through the backlash to a new era of progress, I think leaning into the type of collaborations that you're talking about with intentionality is something that we should do. I know Representative Carson and myself will take that back to the CPC leadership and figure out how to operationalize it.
We have Jeff, Greg, and then Congressman Kendrick Meeks.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm so happy to be here and to be a host. Secondly, Dave, I feel like I graduated from Dave's YouTube University. I watch all his videos. Get me and my cousin Kelly turned up. So this is a two-part question. So number one, you speak so much, Dave, about entrepreneurship and ownership, but there's this other element that's going to become even more important as we look through technology and we look at through this digital divide. You mentioned that content is extremely valuable these days. You talk a lot about us as Black folks owning our stuff, but then also protecting our IP and intellectual property. You mentioned licensing earlier. Can you speak more to the importance of us doing that? I think that takes that conversation about ownership to the next step. But then for our congressmen, what we see is specifically those who are standing in the gap, doing the work to support entrepreneurs in the community. That same element of appropriation is happening, right? When there's money to support entrepreneurs in the Black tech or the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem, it typically funnels to white-led organizations first, and Black-led organizations get on the backdrop. There are those things that are coming up in Congress, and there are opportunities for us to get some of that rearranged, similar to what we did with the PPP this year.
Well, go ahead, Congressman.
No, I was just going to say quickly, there are opportunities. In fact, we know historically a lot of businesses have built generational wealth through governmental contracting, be it city government, be it state government, and certainly federal government. I think that there are great opportunities, particularly as we are in the middle of this infrastructure bill, which Chairman Jeffries will speak to, where there are opportunities for Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. I'm also on the Intelligence Committee, and when you talk about contracting in the intelligence space, particularly with tech companies, the government does a lot of contracting, especially the IC or the intelligence community. And as things become more complicated, as cloud technology starts to expand, something you know very well about, Jeff, encryption becomes important. We want to create systems that will allow local governments, as Eddie Melton's running and they're contesting a race, we want to be able to store those voter files in the cloud, but we want to make sure that cloud storage is secure enough that you don't have state or non-state actors or just rogue actors trying to infiltrate and disrupt our electoral process. This is a great opportunity for Black tech to step in and work with the government in terms of innovation in space. Many people don't know, and Jeff, you can speak to this. I know you're in Texas, but you're a Hoosier. Indianapolis has a growing tech space, and there are a lot of Black entrepreneurs who are the next Bezos and the next Dashes and the next Jeff Williams, who could really contract with the government in a meaningful way, but they've traditionally not had those voices. They've been subcontractors, but we have the capacity to act as primes, but it starts today's point with advocacy and having folks who can speak on their behalf in a meaningful way. And that's what Black folks.
And I want to add to that, when you think about politics, right? What is politics at its core? Yeah, there's advocacy, and we fight, for civil rights, for racial justice, for social justice, economic justice. All of that is incredibly important, and we're going to continue to do the work, whether it's the George Floyd Justice Policing Act, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, all of the areas of change that are necessary. But at its core, politics is about the management of public money. The management of public money. And the reality is, some to the detriment of many others, largely our community. In the moment that we're in right now, which some of us would refer to as the Build Back Better era, where you have major pieces of legislation, trillions of dollars worth of resources being spent, yes, to crush the virus and to provide direct relief to every person who are struggling. But with the current bill that's in front of us that Andre is working hard on, the American Jobs Plan, it's really an investment in our economy, in economic growth. What we want to do is make sure that this time will be different as compared to prior occasions, such as in the aftermath of the New Deal, where you had, or in the aftermath, I should say, of the Great Depression, where you had FDR say, the American people need a new deal to emerge from this depression and to begin to try to create the great American middle class. That was a period of significant investment, the management of public money. And you also had a similar period when the veterans came back from World War II after saving the world. You had the GI Bill, which was a massive federal government intervention in helping to create the middle class in the suburbs through home ownership and a variety of other programs. And if you look at those two periods of time, the New Deal and the GI Bill, African Americans were systematically excluded from both. In large measure because in order to get them passed, Southern Dixiecrats basically said this has got to be administered at the local level, and when you administer it at the local level, we can exclude Black folks. And even at the national level, for instance, and this is something that Andre and I have been studying, and I say all of this to say, this is why at this moment we have to lean in with intentionality and not buy into the notion that these are government handouts that we're talking about. Between 1934 and 1962, the Federal Housing Agency issued low-cost loans to create home ownership opportunities and help build the American middle class in the suburbs. 98% of those loans between 1934 and 1962 went to white Americans. 98%. But at the same time, when you create the suburbs and creating the great American middle class, the largest middle class in the history of the world in the aftermath of World War II, of Black and brown communities. So we're behind the eight ball. And that's why I actually think Joe Biden is correct when he says we're going to tackle systematic racism and systemic racism. The reason why I go through that as one example is to say this is not a fictional concept. This actually has been our journey. And if we're going to reverse it, there's a lot of work to be done at this current level with the trillions of dollars that we are investing in. It's one of the reasons why I think President Biden has said we're going to set aside 40% of the money, 40% of the resources for traditionally under-resourced and disadvantaged communities. And, you know, it's our job collectively to make sure that as the architecture of these bills are being put together, that we're doing so to create opportunity in every single zip code and in every single field of human endeavor.
And, you know, to answer the second part of your question, again, residual income is important. And when you have ownership of an asset that you created, if you give it to somebody and later on in life, they own it and they're able to, when I say license means when I make a movie, if BET plays it, they don't own the movie. They will rent it from me for a certain amount of money. It might be six figures. If Netflix, they're going to rent it from me. Every time you see it on television, you got to pay me. Or rather, you have to pay the person that owns that asset. So if you don't own the things you make, later down in life, if it generates income, you don't get it. So it's important to fight for that. And what I'm noticing based on my experience on this planet is the best thing for politics has been social media. Accountability comes when people see the truth, not when they hear about it, but when they see about it. The thing that has saved me, because I know as a disruptor of industry and culture, and when I'm saying culture, meaning if my culture is not being treated right, I'm punishing those that are not treating my culture fairly, because I'm not going to let anybody, I don't consider myself a victim, even though we're programmed to be scared of our oppressor and to kill each other, our own brothers and sisters, which makes no sense to me that we go for that, but it makes perfect sense as a plan. So you have to have ownership so that you can also give this residual income to your kids. You can leverage residual income. So people buy other people's assets because they know it generates income later on in life so that their families don't have to work so hard. And what I'm seeing is, all right, there's a 99%, there's a 1%. They did what they had to do, right? But in this moment, there's different opportunities to get into the 1%. For example, cryptocurrency, NFTs, only 91% of the world is up on this right now. You know, that means that only 9% of the world actually understands this game that is going to be tracking things, accountability, giving you residual income. It's a lot of things that are happening at that level. And these are the things we need to teach our kids, culturally, our kids, and we need to figure out a new way to do it when the opportunity presents itself. Whether or not it works or not, I'm going to try, because that's the freedom I need. The only freedom from racism is economic empowerment. The way I deal with racism, and I say this often, and I've done this often, if I go in your club and you want to be racist, I'm buying your club, I'm firing your staff, I'm kicking you out. If I go in your house and you treat me like a racist in your house, and I've done this, I'm buying your house and I'm kicking you out, I'm making you mow the lawn first. You know, if you treat, like, look at Kanye. He worked at the Gap, got fired. You know how we do? We come back and we run the Gap. We buy the Gap, or we put the Gap out of business. That's what we have to do. We have to understand our power as a culture and understand when an opportunity presents itself, they look first. They're telling their kids to look first. They're passing all those tricks. You know, I'm so pissed off. Like, I paid someone from another culture to watch my money. You saw what happened, right? Years later, I'm learning about funds and with all these other people. I'm like, I paid millions of dollars for advice that they didn't give me on purpose, that they wanted to jam us up and then publicly make us look bad on purpose. It's a program, but it's our fault if we don't prepare ourselves and our kids. Example, my son, you know, I'm happy we fought. We went through IVF. We lost a baby. We have a baby now. We've been working with the OSG, which is 90 Black Principles. They gave us a real curriculum from the womb to 3 years old on how to teach our kids how to do things that they have the ability to do instead of just putting them in front of a TV and having them watch cartoons. If you know how to be a better parent, you know how to raise a child to be a better parent, and then that whole cycle breaks. But no one's teaching that. So we got a lot of young fathers, a lot of young mothers. No one's even teaching them how to raise them. My son's been potty trained at 4 months old. He's learning how to swim right now. He's learning 2 languages. Now, I see it working. We've been talking to him since he was in the belly. We were taught that from other Black principals, how to do that. But I never heard of that before. I wish I would have knew about this with my other 5 kids that are adults now. They'd have a better trajectory if I would have done my job better. So all of these things, like learning how to capitalize off opportunities, teaching your children and preparing them ahead of time, and showing us how to raise our kids, I think that's the way for new financial empowerment. We go from the 99 to the 1. Now, I feel like I'm in the 1, but I came from the 99, and I'm never going to leave the 99 because they got me to the 1. I'm going to break down the doors, and I'm going to knock down that 1. That's what I'm trying to do, and do it in a very cool, safe way. Because it doesn't take violence right now. It takes awareness, being strategic, and us sticking together as a culture, us stop fighting each other and looking at our oppressor instead of getting into that program of being distracted by entertainment and sports and all that other stuff and fighting, and just look at what they're doing. We can do it better no matter what. Trust me on that.
All right. Thank you. Powerful, 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 powerful. Greg Stowers.
Hey, how's everybody doing? First off, thanks, Congressman, for creating this space. I'm looking around this room. I see a lot of familiar faces, so thank you for giving us this opportunity. Congressman Jeffries, we also share that fraternity connection, so appreciate that, my brother. Dame, I'll piggyback off my man, Jeff. I've been watching you for a while. I'm currently thinking about you on the Champions soundtrack. Now that's got me hyped for almost 15 years, so thank you. But this is one of your previous comments. Can we talk about exposure, about how important it is for young people to be clued in to new ideas, new concepts, new people? And maybe that's a question for the three of y'all. I know we got time constraints, but just would be interested to see your thoughts on the importance of exposure for younger people.
That it's everything. Like, you can't expect a child to just know everything innately. They have to be told and they have to practice doing it. So even with health, they get the first health first and then we have to get it last and get the variation of it that they didn't take. Nah, we need to know everything first. Like I said, that with this gaming, with all of this stuff, all the new ways that have created themselves to make money because of a pandemic, the end of the world created a new world. So we have to figure out what the future looks like. If you have a business model or you're doing anything that can't withstand a pandemic, you got the wrong business model. Because this shit worked. And it might have been an accident before, even though I doubt it. But shit, I would see somebody doing it again. Knock this out for 2 years, kill an economy, have people fighting each other. So why would it's a good strategic thing if you're into war. So you always want to be prepared for it. And if you're not, at least you'll be prepared. But your business model always has to be bulletproof, and you should be looking for new ways because a lot of opportunities have presented themselves. Because no matter what, as human beings, we're going to figure it out. There's generals and there's soldiers. So, a lot of people act tough, but when a war happens, and war comes in all kinds of forms, it's not always what, is presented. This was a war. So when a war comes, people start folding, they're looking for answers and direction. They're asking questions instead of giving answers. Don't ever tell me you built for war, because we just went through one. If you can't win in this environment, do not call yourself a general. But this is a great time, not a bad time, because the old way of things, the way things were, did not behoove us. So we needed a change. This is a fresh start, and we just have to figure out what it is. There's always dark. There's always light in the dark. Like he said, every time we have a win, then there's a loss. Then there's a win, there's a loss. That's the yin and the yang. That's life. You just got to be prepared to win during a loss. Some people get rich in a recession. A lot of people do. Billionaires made more money in this pandemic. So why can't we be on that side? Because we're not looking. We got to look, and we have to defend our future.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Congressman Meek.
Congressman Carson, it's great being on this Zoom with many of these great leaders. And Mr. Chairman, it's always good to see you. I excuse the fact that we're in a car, but as you know, when the Lord's ready for you to come home, I had a good friend that passed, so we had to do the wake. And so I'm glad to be a part of the discussion. Some of the knowledge that is being shared is good. And, as you know, I served in the legislature, and my mother before me served in the legislature and Congress. And I just want to say to the group mainly, just more of a statement that I'm glad that these two policymakers in Washington, D.C. that are doing serious work, and I'm not talking about on the basket weaving committee. You have the chairman of the caucus and the majority that is not only available for question and answer, but also sharing factual knowledge, not only on the past, but in the future as we move forth. But Mr. Carson serving on the Intelligence Committee that has been in some serious work, involved in serious work over the last 6 years of everything that has happened internationally and also domestically. And having these two leaders, not around the table, but at the table when these events are taking place, they can deploy that not only with their colleagues in Congress and other parliamentarians throughout the world and this present administration, but they also are willing to share that knowledge as far as they can go with all of you on this Zoom. So I just want to commend both of you, Brother Dash. I appreciate your passion and wanting to share, your experiences and your forward lean. And I'm just honored to be on it. My wife and I, Archie, we are both members of law firms in Washington, D.C., and we work with the congressmen and others. And being on the K Street side as a former public policy maker, and understanding that process when I talk about the four branches of government, we know through Schoolhouse Rock about the executive branch, judiciary, and legislative, but there's also another branch that's out there of those of us that have served in public service and willing and still have that spirit in our heart. So, Congressman, I would just say this. I look forward to being a part of discussions like this in the future. And hopefully I can share the little that I know, and I'm continuing to learn. But this is how we move the ball forward. We're not spinning our wheels. Things are actually happening. And so I encourage you to do more of it. And I want to thank everyone that's on the call that has supported this event tonight.
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate that. I know Chairman Dash and Chairman Jeffrey certainly appreciate it. At some point, we're going to have you hook Dame up with Rocky on the cigar piece,
Absolutely.
Dame may already know him. I don't know.
Well, we have all of I'm pretty sure all that he likes with the Padron family and Arturo Fuentes and the Abos and also the Ashton cigars. So we represent all of them. So but we look forward, sir, and thank you. And I want to thank the members of the legislature as a former creature of the legislature, which I know that Chairman Jeffries have a great affinity for also. I want to thank you for being here. And like I said, let's continue to do have this kind of discourse and dialogue, because the more we know, and the more, let's put it this way, we have to wallow in we have to wallow in the possible versus the impossible. And I believe calls like this, we understand the possible, and we know that there is a yellow brick road for us to skip down and grab others as we go.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thank you to Urshi. I know you all on a trip, and I'll see you in Miami.
Okay.
Great to see you. Great to see you, Archie. Appreciate both of you and your friendship and your support over the years. And Andre, just one parting thought. It's been a very powerful conversation. It's an honor to have been part of it. Appreciate you convening everybody. Appreciate your support of Andre Carson, who is a phenomenal brother and public servant and statesman, and certainly have enjoyed the Dash University seminar that we've had. It's been impressive and edifying, as my pastor would say, in terms of just the information. And one thing I would add, to think about as we move forward is that, opportunity and seizing opportunity and being able to sort of advance through life, to me, I think requires, both access to information, right? That's key. And there's been a lot of information that's been shared, but it also involves a mentality and an approach to things. And it's something that Dame said that I thought was particularly important. And we've seen this in the context of the pandemic-induced recession, where you've got billionaires who've become multi-billionaires. How does that happen? Well, it seems to me that in certain situations, when you have a crisis that strikes, from a mindset approach, you have the majority of the people thinking about survival and surviving. They're thinking about thriving. And a lot of it is because they got access to information that many of us have never had. and realize in the crisis there's a lot of opportunity. But it's also a mentality approach that they've got to certain things in terms of how they're going to seize this moment of opportunity and crisis, not to survive it, but to thrive beyond it. Now, I think our governmental approach is, and this is why I credit President Biden, he said on the campaign trail, we're going to build back better. And to me, that was an approach that says we're not just going to survive this crisis, we're going to try to thrive when we come out of it. Because normal and returning to normal for far too many communities is problematic. When half the American people said prior to the pandemic, they couldn't afford a sudden, unexpected $500 expense. That's insane.
Yeah.
In the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we can't go back to normal. And so when President Biden says we're going to build back better, our job right now is to bring that to life. What does that look like? Let's imagine a future where things are better for the communities that have been traditionally left behind. And in that regard, all of your thoughts, all of your ideas, all of your perspectives on how to do that, how to bring that concept of building back better to life is certainly welcome. And know that you've got a public servant in Andre Carson who's driven to make sure that in this crisis moment where there's opportunity to create a better society, we're leaning into that with everything that we have.
But Chairman Jeffries, I want to thank you for the friendship, for the brotherhood. And of course, Dane, we talk regularly. I want to thank you as well. And the stuff we do with the commission and Eddie, people don't know, Hakeem and I are actually neighbors in D.C. We stay in the same building. He's been to my spot to help me move furniture and coffee tables. And, we talk music all the time. So with that, Dane and Hakeem, one last question. Jessica Garcia has been waiting patiently. She wanted to ask a fun question before we ended this wonderful Zoom. I want to thank all of you for participating because your support means, to Dane's point, we're liberated. We don't have to depend on people. When we're attacked, we can get on TV, we can get on radio and social media and pay for it and pay our staff because of the love of the people. Garcia, let's go.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. What's everyone listening to? Simple question, just to close it out.
Black Guns.
Yeah, for me, besides the Black Guns, I don't know if you guys know Taj Mahal is a great blues singer. He just recently sent me all of his vinyl. So I've been listening to a lot of blues lately, a lot of Jimi Hendrix as well. But all the vinyl, I'm just trying to get my brain into a certain rhythm because I just feel like that's another thing they tried to take from us and we want to take back, rock and roll. So I'm taking that too. I want it back.
Andre, you want to answer?
Yeah. So, I like people that know I do my karaoke event.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I love hip hop. I like the golden era hip hop. I love New Jack Swing. I like rock. But, I'm really into, and maybe you and Dame can appreciate this because, we come from the same generation. I like what they call yacht rock now. I like Ambrosia. Come on, Dame.
I listen to yacht rock on Spotify too.
All right, then.
You like that Toto? You like Afro? I got it.
Baby, come back, all of that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm on yacht rock. I'm on that playlist.
All right, bet. That's where I am. You know what it is.
Absolutely.
Don't try to revoke my card, all right?
I listen to it. That's what I'm telling you. I'm on it.
That's real. Well, for me, sort of, golden era hip hop, the 90s into the 2000s is really always on rotation. But I've been listening to a lot of gospel music, actually. I think particularly with all that's been going on in the country, just the soulfulness of gospel music, and the aspirational quality to it, and the fact that, it's so connected to our history of having overcome a lot of adversity and continuing to move forward faithfully. That's something I've been leaning into a lot recently.
That's beautiful. And I definitely have to put Miss Neeks in my playlist too.
Ooh, there she go.
Okay.
Everybody.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Shalom. Good to see you.
You too.
She got booked for a show this week. She making some money.
Oh,
My book.
get him.
They got
Oh,
booked.
I want to thank everybody.
Next time we're gonna have some live music at this part. Why not?
Let's do
All right,
it.
we're gonna do some live music. We got to bring your nephew in. He did one of my events. I think he's with Chris Gotti, one of Dame's friends. So
Brother.
we'll make it happen. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the hosts, the commission. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you, Chairman Jeffries, for taking the time. I know your schedule's ultra busy. Thank you, Dame, for the friendship and brotherhood and the love, man. The commission, we love you.
Thank you,
for
bro.
Congress, go vote.
Thank you.
Love you, everybody. Thank you.
If you want another amazing video with the one and only Dame Dash, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.